Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning and welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant, substituting for Jeremy today. I will be back on Thursday morning with two more guests, and as well as Friday morning. Tomorrow you will have Ken Malgeri of Narcissus Florist filling in for Jeremy and for myself, by the way. And it is 7:09. We have about 60 degrees in downtown Toms River. I have been told it is raining, so make sure you have your slicker and your rain gear on today. It will be about high of 70 and overcast and rainy all day. And we're continuing our conversation because I have kept him all morning, Mr. Adam Puharic. We had talked about Michael's Feet, who is the co-founder with his wife, Dana, his lovely wife, Dana. And now we're going to talk a little bit about his former job. We'll use his former job to talk about this. Adam was the former Monmouth County Republican chairperson. And so with that, we're hoping he has some insight, different insight than I brought you this morning, but also insight that may wake up some additional callers to join us on a conversation this morning at 732-505-1160 about last night's debate. So let's start talking about the debate.
So Phil Brilliant, obviously a number of my board members from Michael's Feet just wanted me to say that our organization is a nonpartisan organization. And we help babies of every kind, of every color, of every race, of every religion, of every political stripe. However, in my past life, I had the job of being a partisan party boss for one of the two sides. And so I sat there last night and I watched this presidential debate and I said, Phil Brilliant wants me to come up here and be interesting and to provide some insight that only a former chairman could. And so I will try to do that in this segment. I'll try to make it fun. And I'll try to also acknowledge a couple things. I think you had a caller earlier at 6 a.m. named Tom, maybe?
Yep.
And Tom maybe said it best. I don't think this moved the needle one
direction.
bit.
I agree. And just so you know, that Zach is running the WOBM AM fact checker.
Oh,
so we are being checked to make sure that we are true and accurate as we go through, and there'll be a report card later today.
Yeah, so and that kind of brings me to my first thought for you in this segment, which is that nobody debates anymore in our country. Instead, what we do is one side throws one set of facts at somebody, and the other side throws another set of facts, and the facts are technically correct in one sense, but not technically correct in another sense. And so you sit there, and I started today with you at 6:30, and I said, you are a great American, and I believe that in my heart. And I believe that you're an American that brings people together. But I think what we maybe saw last night is just another episode in dividing a nation. I don't think anyone came together. Anyone likes Hillary more or likes Donald Trump more. I think they will vote for one of the two of them.
So what did you take away from the beginning of the night? Okay, they're on stage, beautiful red, pantsuit that Hillary has on. He's got his blue. Actually, I'm colorblind, so it looked like a blue suit to me. But when he stopped and said, Secretary Clinton, that's correct. I want to make sure you're happy tonight. That was the first point of the evening, and this was very early on, that I thought about the fact that though he may not have been well prepared, somebody said a few things to him before he got on that stage as to how he should address her and how he should handle the night. What did you think when you saw that?
Phil, if this was a boxing match, it had 3 unequal rounds to it. The first round was about approximately the first 20 minutes, and by points I'd score them for Donald Trump. There was theater, there was drama. He was pugilistic in his defense and his flurry of attacks. And then...
Was it pugilistic, not braggadocious?
It wasn't braggadocious. He was pugilistic, okay? And I thought he did well. Right. But there was a middle 40-minute segment. There was a round 2 where I would say most Republican observers would objectively say, Donald lost this section of the the fight, the debate, the boxing match. And then there was a third round, which was the last 20 minutes. And it was a scrum. It was a messy tie. The responses from Hillary were like, oh, I'm going to work with my allies. And the things were from Trump were just, you're wrong. And you've been doing that for 30 years and nothing's changing. And it ends up in this inconclusive brawl. So you give her some points for that 40-minute middle section. You give him some points for the first 20. And then they kind of finished to a sloppy ending at the end of the program. And I sat there and I thought about this. Phil, you watched the entire debate because you have to, because you wanted something to talk about today. I'm wondering about the moms and dads who had to go and put their kids to bed around 9:40 p.m. And if they left at that moment.
You're right. They were talking about that this morning, that basically, the beginning of the debate, that first 20 minutes, that first hit, before people kind of said, let me go check on the Saints-Falcons game, let me see if the Mets, because it's all about the Mets, came back, or put their kids to sleep, whatever it might have been, that they were like, you know what, Trump is doing a good job. Trump is winning this. Now, but keep in mind, though, let's take 3 hours away. Okay, and now we're at 6:30 on the West Coast.
Right.
Okay,
right.
But those people are now sitting down to dinner and thinking about the fact, do I want to have this on while I'm eating, or are we going to step away and eat also because we've already seen what Trump can do? So you balance it out across the country because unlike their arguments last night about the crime in New York, this isn't all about New York.
Correct.
This is about America.
Mr. Brilliant. So as a former county chairman, I dealt with county elections, and the presidential race is actually won or lost based on the candidate's performance in key counties across the nation. And more specifically, the presidential race in the last 24 years has become a race of the East Coast. There must be certain states won by the Republican in order for there to be any contest whatsoever. Because if certain swing states are not won, then the entire country rolls over and people that would normally vote Republican stay home. And so it is amazing and fascinating that both candidates have, let's call it a Northeast Coast bias.
Yep.
And that's fascinating to me because the hearts and minds of Americans that are actually counted this year are happening all along the eastern seaboard.
Right, and even if you take their vice presidential candidates, you really don't leave the East Coast either. You may get a little bit of the Midwest, but you're right, because when you go on Election Day, all those polls are closing at 9 o'clock. It's only 6 o'clock on the West. And so you're really going to play into that as to what will happen. Now, I'm going to hold you on what you remember because we do have to go pay for this. Good. So we're going to go to some commercial breaks. Good. When we come back, we're going to talk about what you remember. So there's a little teaser there.
Yeah.
And we also want to talk a little about Mr. Lester Holt, because you have a different take on him than I do. I called him a sissy this morning, and it sounds like you're going to call him the savior of the Republican Party. Or maybe the Democratic Party.
Yeah, we'll see, won't we?
We'll see. Back in a moment.
Get more Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin at our website, WOBMAM.com. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
Good morning and welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant. It is 7:21. We are continuing our conversation and review of last night's presidential debate with Mr. Adam Puharic. And when we went to break, we were talking about two things. One, Adam's memory, which I know my memory is not that good. So he must have had a bulb went off in his head. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Lester Holt. So what was your memory?
So my memory was of a debate that we were prepping candidates for in 2006. And the interesting thing about prepping candidates for a debate type forum on a county election level is that you really truly understand you're not really televised, or possibly you're televised on a local community network, and your audience is a print audience. So prepping candidates for a debate, in this case it took place in Asbury Park, New Jersey, my one message to the candidate was, don't look to convert anyone on your point of view. Give your message to your audiences that are important for your audiences. If you're a Republican, you're going to lower taxes. If you were a Democratic challenger at the time, you're going to talk about corruption that could be inherent in Monmouth County's government because it was one-party rule for decades. Stick to those points and do that. And to some extent, last night I was brought back to that time, and I really looked at this presidential debate, and I said neither one of the candidates on the stage are trying to convince anyone to change their vote. They are dealing with the sharp edges of their political bases, and they were razor sharpening those edges.
It actually sounded like, if you really sat back and watched the debate, it was really like being at a rally for each of them individually. Because all they did was they put out there exactly what they were saying at rallies, and it wasn't like the other person was there. There were opportunities, like you talked about, that you thought the middle 40, Hillary won.
Yes.
Okay. And that was the opportunity where not once but twice Trump had an opportunity to really drill her.
Yeah, there were no knockout punches here for either side, respectfully, in my opinion, Mr. Phil Brilliant. And I find it interesting because just watching the drama, the kabuki theater of this debate, the first 20 minutes, Trump's horsepower was at near maximum, okay? And almost like a switch, he backed off. And they started asking questions.
You think Melania put her hand up in the audience and said stop.
During the break, I did. I said to you, Phil, I said, it's as if Melania had some sort of pre-designated movement in her seat that she would grab her wrist or grab her earring or something like that, and that Donald would know to back down. Because at that point, about 20 minutes in, he stopped cutting people off. He let Hillary go a full 2 minutes.
Yep.
He nodded. He shook his head. He disapproved, and he allowed them to go. And there was something in him that was backing off. Now, why? I don't know. We'll see. The drama of this is we don't know why he was doing that.
And then she went after him on the tax returns. Okay, said you haven't given up your tax returns. The American government doesn't know how much you've paid in taxes. If you've paid in taxes, yada yada, the whole entire thing.
It's an interesting thing, Phil. It's an interesting thing because I sat at that moment and I said, anybody who's a Republican-leaning voter does not actually believe it's your patriotic responsibility to pay taxes. They think it's your responsibility to your family to legally pay as little taxes as humanly possible. Yet I know on the other side, there are probably Democratic voters who sat there aghast saying, you should do your duty as a citizen and pay taxes because those support programs that help people that are less fortunate. And so we have this dichotomy of this idea of paying taxes.
That's why there's a 6,000-page tax report, and tax every year it gets updated and they change what you can declare, what you can't. And that's why you have that, because you don't always pay taxes.
There's not a single Republican-leaning person who felt bad about Donald Trump being able to use accountants to have it at his advantage to pay less taxes.
Right, definitely.
And there's not a single Democratic voter who thinks he's a hero for doing that.
Right. But at that opportunity last night, he turns and says, I will reveal my tax returns when you give the 33,000 emails that were destroyed or that are missing.
It's a beautiful moment. But he doesn't finish. He drops it, right? Sometimes you deliver a political punch and let the air just hang there and let the American people digest what you've just said. But he kind of went off topic. He backed off. He went in a different direction. He defended his tax returns again. So once again, the chin was up. The chin of Hillary Clinton was up in the air, and he was ready to punch, but it swerved and a miss.
It fizzles out, and he backs off, and and she basically backs off of it too. I mean, she comes back to the tax return like one other time, and that's it. And but it became an awkward 40 minutes, as you said right there.
It was awkward.
Because he was not who he has been on this campaign trail. And we have seen him, this was his 25th debate, I think it was, that we've seen between the Republican primaries and here. And we have never seen him do that before and back off. So as we go to the news break at the bottom of the hour, and this is always the greatest part of the show is you just keep breaking when you get into topics.
Tom, it's 7:28, Tom.
It's 7:28. When we come back, we're going to talk, I want to hit the Lester Holt and talk a little bit more about what they didn't say last night that really could have gotten the American people excited. Back in a moment.
Coming up next, the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning and welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I'm Phil Brilliant, substituting for Jeremy this morning. It is 7:36 on Tuesday, September 27th. It is 60 degrees, rainy outside, high of 72 today. And remember, join the conversation, 732-505-1160, as we finish the last half hour with my good friend, Mr. Adam Puharic of the Michael's Feet Foundation. And again, we've been talking about and reviewing the debate last night, and when we went to break, we said we wanted to talk a little about Lester Holt, who was the moderator last night, who we have a different opinion on. I basically thought he was a sissy and really had no control over the room. And Adam, of course, has a different view.
Yeah, so once again, thank you for having me on, Mr. Phil Brilliant. Really, this is great. It's awesome to wake up at this radio station with you and to talk about the presidential debate. And you introduced me as from Michael's Feet, but as you know, that has nothing to do with partisan politics. So
that's
it's really my experience as a past Republican chairman that's going to allow me to try to have some insight and intelligence for your listeners this morning. And with that, Lester Holt. So here is my theory to you. I submit.
And it was not Brian Williams in disguise.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. My friend, Phil Brilliant, I really feel that there's two overarching things that were accomplished last night. Number one, there will never again be presidential debates after this cycle with a human moderator. I really feel that in my heart, that there is no sane, sober Republican campaign manager who will allow a moderator to pick their own questions.
So it's going to be like Facebook or
something,
Twitter,
a computer
and people
generated,
just pull questions off and start throwing them at the candidates.
It's
okay.
over.
I like that.
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
And Lester Holt ended it.
And it's over because they can't be partisan.
Donald Trump, in part, lost slightly on points because it was a 2-1 fight on that stage. It was 2 versus 1. So in that way, he actually did surprisingly well. But why do I say it was 2-1? So let's review just a quick list in no particular order of the questions that were asked. Donald Trump, your tax records. Hillary Clinton, cybersecurity, and why the Russians probably hacked the DNC. The Russians who Donald Trump likes. Right. Here's your softball. Throw it up, kick him out. Donald Trump, sexist comments that you made. Hillary Clinton, how we can improve race relations. Isn't that nice? Doesn't everyone want to be positive about that? Donald Trump, birther controversy. Hillary Clinton, no need to talk about the emails or Benghazi or the deplorables comment. Donald Trump, bad comments about NATO. Hillary Clinton, explain to us your foreign policy experience and why you are great. In this way, the questions handpicked by Lester Holt were designed, and I've said this to you since February. We talk about this all the time. Whether we are voting today, your listeners are voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, the entire election is about Donald Trump.
Right.
Every question was about Donald Trump. Every response was about Donald Trump. I wonder, and I submit to you, Mr. Brilliant, and to all of you at home, I submit to you how any one of us would have done if we had 90 minutes of cross-examination on ourselves.
You're right.
We'd probably lose on points.
And you talk about again, it goes back to her preparation. She's a lawyer. She knew exactly how to handle the questions and how to rebut it and put it back over to him. But you're right, though. They were all softball sent her way.
Phil,
we talked about the fact they asked the question about cyber hacks, okay, and about the Russians are behind it and he's friendly with Russia, And then that kind of turns into a little bit of foreign policy discussion. But you're right. There's not one question And I don't even think
email.
I have to go back.
No Benghazi.
Is there? Do
No
they even
deplorables.
mention Benghazi in the entire 90 minutes?
Oh no, not at all.
Not at all.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. And here's something you talk about. Being on trial. You talk about criminal Hillary or crooked Hillary, whatever you want to call her. I mean, emails and Benghazi. And I know people. They say Trump says she puts her whole plans for how she's going to defeat ISIS on her website. Now ISIS knows what she's going to do. And then she in turn says, well, you haven't said a word. And he's like, well, I don't want to tip them off. I'm not going to say anything. Well, what people want to hear is they want to know where their kids are going to go.
Yeah.
They want to know if they're going to be sent overseas. I can understand all that aspect. But here's a woman who not only sent troops overseas, okay, and then she pulled troops out from Iraq.
She left them unsupported.
Yep.
And,
okay?
and Americans,
and there's
good,
not
good
one
American
question
soldiers
about
died
it.
as a
There's
result of it.
There's nothing brought up about it.
But,
and he has the opportunity there, and all he can think of is the 400-pound person sitting in mid-America hacking into computer systems.
Bill, let me tell you, my friend, I sat there and I watched this 90-some minutes happen. And I said that both candidates are not talking about the central issue of our time, the central issue being homegrown radical Muslim extremists. Both of them, there was no real question. It was at the end of the night, Lester Holt tried to mumble something about homegrown extremism, and they both parried and thrusted and went back to an earlier point. And here we are in a presidential election, very close to one that's important for our children and our children's children, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah, and the only time you may have had an inkling that they were talking about Muslims or they were talking about extremists was when they talked about the birth certificate.
The birther.
The birther. So when we come back from this break, we'll talk a little about the birther, but I want to start heading us up to the top of the hour, so we're going to lighten it up a little and also talk about the fact that at one point in time, Adam worked for Roger Ailes at Fox News. Yeah. Back in a moment. Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant of Brilliant Environmental Services. I have to say that at least once a morning, substituting for Jeremy. It is 7:49, Tuesday, September 27th. We are continuing our review of last night's debate. I am with my good friend, Mr. Adam Puharic, who is the former Monmouth County Republican chairperson. And we won't hold that against him.
No, we shouldn't, Phil. And thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm glad you're here. This was good. I thought about how I was going to do this week, and I wanted to do something special today. So when we went to break, talk a little bit, we'll take a quick segment on that you did work for the former CEO of Fox News,
Roger Ailes.
Ailes.
So coming out of college, I did my undergraduate studies at Montclair State University. I did broadcasting. And one of my first jobs, it was probably my second overall job of my life, was to be a videotape editor at the newly formed Fox News channel in 1996. And it was 47th and 6th is where it was in Manhattan. And being a young man, getting on the bus from New Jersey and coming in and working there, there was a lot of energy in those early days of Fox News Channel and formation of the channel. And I don't want to speak directly to the allegations and the sexual misconduct by Roger Ailes or anything like that. But I will say this, that to work for Roger Ailes, he was one of the most inspirational people you could ever work for as a young man growing up. He had expressions. He had Roger-isms, which were, you've heard them before, and every culture has their version of them. There's 8 ways to solve a problem. He used to say 50 miles outside of New York City, this country is a different place. And now think about it, Phil. You're an East Coast guy. I'm an East Coast guy. We grew up in this area. We grew up near the libraries in our towns. And we... Library. And yet, so Manhattan drives our news cycle.
Right.
Manhattan drives our news. But Roger was smart enough to know back then in 1996, he grabbed us college kids, he pulled us into the newsroom, and he said, guys, do you know just 50, 60 miles outside of New York City, people hunt, people have guns, people skin their own stuff, people sew their own clothes.
They fish,
it's a
they have horse
different
and
world.
Buggies.
It's a different world. Right. And they're not really driven by Manhattan news stories. He goes, so this is supposed to be a national news channel. So when you guys are searching out your news stories, don't just sit there and tell me there's a new bagel chain opening up in Manhattan. Look for the stories that matter to people away from Manhattan.
Yeah. And I'm not going to ask the question. I don't want to know the answer, but did you probably didn't fit the model that he was looking for a long-term.
Well, what did you say
employee.
before? That I have a face for radio, right?
For radio, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't. But even back then, I was single. So Dana, this has nothing to do with you, but I was single. But even back then, he had the opportunity to hire a lot of talented on-air female broadcasters.
And from that, let's move forward. So what we wanted to talk about as we closed our day, and Adam, I do want to thank you for coming in this morning. I know you normally do wake up at 4 o'clock, but usually I took you away from your gym time.
Yeah, the true story, 30 seconds, Phil, brilliant. This is my burpee day. I have this workout regimen taught to me by the great Trudy, and it basically is like 70 burpees, 120 sit-ups, 120 reverse crunches, and jumping jacks and other things. And it's like a 29-minute cycle that I do. And so I'm missing it today. So I'm especially thankful that you're allowing me to miss it.
Well, I will tell you, though, that when we go off the air, you'll have to tell me what a burpee is, because my exercise regimen usually just includes double ham cheeseburgers.
Can't wait. I'm going to make you do your first burpee.
Today. He already Zach made me do 22 push-ups about 3 months ago, and that almost caused a coronary.
Oh, come on, Phil.
But so we want to talk about October 9th. Brings us to Washington University in St. Louis. It is the next presidential debate. It's a Sunday night, so they're going to go up against Sunday Night Football. I haven't looked at the schedule yet to see who they'll be up against, and they probably will be up against a World Series game, if not a playoff game. So how do they get the viewership? What do we expect the next time around when we really think the first time was lame?
Yeah, so here's a question. Rather than answering it and being the expert on all topics, I have a question for your listeners, and it is, what would you want to happen? What if you're there and you're directing this? If we could make this a Hollywood script instead of an actual live event, what would your expectations be? If you're for Donald Trump, what could he do that makes you feel better? If you're for Hillary Clinton, what would she do that would make you feel better? What would move the country forward in a direction that helps your children?
So for almost 2 years now, we have said that Donald Trump would not make it onto that stage.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But he went through debate after debate after debate being Donald Trump. Okay. Last night, I don't think we saw the real Donald Trump. Now, do I like the real Donald Trump? I don't even like the Donald Trump I saw last night. But quite honestly, as a Republican, though I've been called, a rhino, a Republican in name only, I cannot vote for Hillary. I'm looking for my best option. So what do I want to see? I want to see somebody who's going to come out and battle because he wants this job. Yeah. I didn't get that feel last night from him. I want him to show, you know what, look presidential, be presidential. What does that mean? I have no idea. But I want somebody who wants to show me that they understand what the American people want. They understand the concerns of the American people, and they're willing to fight for it. And you know what? Maybe you do have to tip your hat a little as to what your policies are and what you're going to do as president, because you can't just beating around the bush.
Yeah. So the former strategist in me looks at this and says, Donald Trump has made it to the second presidential debate by not revealing a single detail on any plan. Why would I ever want him to, other than maybe November 7th, talk about a single detail? It's worked so well for our team up to this point. If I'm him, that's kind of what I'm thinking. On the other hand, though, you said a word which is key critical. I think there's lots of listeners at home right now who feel it in their blood, in their bones. It's anti-intellectual. It's not about data points, and it's not about 10-step programs. It's, I want to see them go out there and say, I want to be your president. I want to fight for this job. I want to make America great, the old Donald Trumpism that got him to this stage. But you want to see the fire in the belly that says, I can do this. I can do this.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be highbrow. It doesn't have to be at an NBA level.
I want him to go out there and win voters.
Yeah.
I want him to go out there. You said you don't convert people.
Yeah.
I want him to go out there and at least maintain the people who have come this far with him and then get some of the other voters. Again, thank you very much to Adam for being with us this morning. This was a great show. Thank you to Zach. Remember, join Kenny tomorrow morning at 5:30. Set your alarm clock to wake up with Kenny Malzuri as opposed to Jeremy Grunin. Stay on. Listen to Joel and Marianne from Preferred Health. Have a great day, and talk to you when I come back on Thursday morning. Goodbye.
The The news never stops at WOBMAM.com. Get the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.